Imagine someone who thrives on controlling you. Suddenly, you stop giving them power. Suddenly, their entire world starts to shake. That's when the trick appears. And it's subtle, almost invisible, but deadly effective. Imagine someone who thrives on controlling you. Suddenly, you stop giving them power. Suddenly, their entire world starts to shake. That's when the trick appears, and it's subtle, almost invisible, but deadly effective. Narcissists are engineers of influence. When their control slips, they deploy a silent weapon: confusion. They twist facts, challenge your memory, question your perceptions. Classic gaslighting. Suddenly, you're second guessing yourself while they regain their lost authority. But here's the thing: awareness dismantles their weapon. Once you recognize the trick, the illusion crumbles. Narcissists are defined by their need for control. It isn't merely a preference or a habit, it's an obsession, an almost instinctual drive that governs their thoughts and actions. Control is the framework through which they view the world. It shapes how they interact with others, make decisions, and maintain their sense of self-worth. At the core, narcissists equate control with power, and power with validation. To them, every reaction you give, every decision you make, every boundary you establish is either a confirmation of their dominance or a threat to it. This obsession often begins subtly. It might appear as charm, persuasion, or guidance, but these behaviors are carefully calculated to steer you and everyone around them toward outcomes that serve their agenda. The aim isn't mutual benefit or collaboration, it is absolute influence. When a narcissist encounters someone who does not conform, who resists being steered or manipulated, their need for control becomes acute. Their calm veneer cracks, revealing frustration and sometimes panic. The more independent the other person is, the more threatened the narcissist feels. This is because narcissists rely on external validation. They define themselves by their ability to influence and dominate. If you resist, you threaten the narrative they have constructed about themselves. The narrative that portrays them as powerful, competent, and indispensable. That threat triggers a cascade of responses designed to reclaim control. You might see escalated manipulation, sudden mood swings, or even silent treatments. These are not random behaviors. They are strategic attempts to reassert dominance, to make the environment bend to their will once again. Control obsession is also intimately tied to their perception of reality. Narcissists are not merely trying to influence your actions. They are attempting to shape your perceptions, your beliefs, and even your memory. This can manifest as gaslighting, where your recollection of events is questioned, dismissed, or reframed to align with their version of reality. Their goal is not just to make you do something, they want to make you believe that their reality is the only valid reality, and that resisting it is impossible or foolish. The obsession extends into every interaction. Conversations, relationships, and even social media exchanges become arenas for asserting influence. Even seemingly trivial events, a disagreement, a delayed response, or an unshared opinion, can trigger disproportionate reactions because these events challenge their sense of control. What makes this particularly dangerous is that control obsession is relentless. It doesn't fade when you ignore it. It intensifies. The more you assert independence, the more the narcissist adapts and escalates their tactics. They constantly test boundaries, probing for weaknesses, seeking leverage, and exploiting vulnerabilities. In essence, control obsession is a self-perpetuating cycle. powered by insecurity and sustained by the reactions of others. The more you respond emotionally, the more fuel they gain, reinforcing the cycle of manipulation. Recognizing the depth of this obsession is the first step in breaking free because understanding their compulsion allows you to anticipate their tactics, respond strategically, and maintain autonomy without feeding the very power they crave. When a narcissist suddenly realizes that they are losing control over you, the reaction is immediate, intense, and often unpredictable. Unlike ordinary people who might accept independence or differing opinions as a natural part of human interaction, narcissists experience the loss of control as a personal crisis. Their sense of self is tightly entwined with the influence they exert over others. Without it, they feel vulnerable, exposed, and inferior. This panic is not a momentary emotional flare. It is a deep-seated response rooted in fear, insecurity, and the constant need to maintain an image of dominance. When they detect that their influence is slipping, their carefully constructed facade begins to crumble, revealing raw anxiety that can manifest in various manipulative behaviors designed to reclaim their perceived power. This panic is subtle at first, often expressed through small, calculated actions aimed at testing boundaries and eliciting reactions. They might push you with indirect pressure, making statements designed to provoke doubt, guilt, or confusion. The narcissist watches closely, analyzing every response to gauge whether their influence is returning. If the initial attempts fail, the intensity escalates. The emotional panic becomes more visible. Tone changes, sudden outbursts, or unexpected withdrawal can occur. These reactions are carefully designed to destabilize you, because in their perception, if you are unsettled, control can be regained. The more calm, composed, and independent you appear, the more desperate their maneuvers become, creating a cycle of psychological tension in which their anxiety grows alongside their attempts to dominate. A hallmark of this panic is the urgency and creativity with which narcissists act. They might deploy classic manipulative tactics, gaslighting, triangulation, or even strategic flattery. But the intensity is higher than usual because the stakes feel existential to them. Every conversation, every interaction becomes a battlefield for control. They often attempt to create a sense of crisis or dependency, believing that by forcing a reaction, they can reassert dominance. Even minor challenges to their authority, a polite refusal, a personal boundary, or choosing your own path, can trigger disproportionate responses. What seems irrational from the outside is, in their mind, a necessary effort to prevent the perceived collapse of their world. The key to understanding the panic of a narcissist is recognizing its link to ego fragility. Their self-esteem is not internal or resilient. It is built externally on the compliance, admiration, and reactions of others. When they sense that you are no longer responsive to their manipulations, the foundation of their self-image begins to shake. This is why loss of control panic is often accompanied by impulsive escalation, desperate charm, or sudden aggression. The goal is singular: restore influence before the perceived threat grows into a permanent loss of authority. However, for the observant and emotionally aware, this panic is transparent. Recognizing it allows you to remain steady, to avoid reacting impulsively, and to understand that their desperation is not about you, it is about their own insecurity and fear. By maintaining composure and autonomy, You deny them the fuel they need, gradually dismantling the power that their panic seeks to reclaim. Gaslighting is one of the most insidious tools a narcissist employs, and when they sense a loss of control, they escalate it dramatically. At its core, gaslighting is about manipulation of perception, convincing you that your memory, judgment, or feelings are unreliable. It is not just a tactic. For narcissists, it is a weapon to reclaim influence over someone who is beginning to assert independence. When a narcissist can no longer control you through charm, pressure, or obedience, they often amplify gaslighting to destabilize your confidence and reestablish authority. This is not subtle confusion, it is strategic distortion of reality, a psychological tactic designed to make you question the truth of your own experiences. They aim to create an environment where your instincts are doubted and your decisions feel suspect. The amplification occurs in several layers. First, they begin to challenge your memory. Events you clearly recall may suddenly be denied or reframed. You might find yourself questioning, did that really happen that way? This is intentional. By shaking your certainty, they attempt to replace it with their narrative, positioning themselves as the ultimate authority on reality. Next, they may escalate emotional manipulation. They evoke guilt, shame, or fear, suggesting that your perceptions are the cause of conflict or pain. Subtle insinuations become more direct. What once might have been an ambiguous remark now turns into a repeated insistence that you are overreacting, misremembering, or being irrational. This creates cognitive dissonance. The more you resist, the more frustrated you may feel, and that frustration only strengthens their sense of control if you respond emotionally. Triangulation can accompany amplified gaslighting. The narcissist may involve others, friends, family, colleagues, claiming they agree with their version of events or subtly implying that your perspective is flawed. This external validation amplifies the pressure, making it seem as though reality itself is against you. The combination of direct denial, emotional manipulation, and social reinforcement can be overwhelming. The goal is clear: to erode your confidence and reestablish dominance by convincing you that your independent judgment is unreliable. The more dependent you feel on their interpretation of events, the more power they regain. Another key aspect of gaslighting amplification is timing and intensity. Narcissists often escalate when you are most vulnerable, when stressed, tired, or emotionally invested in something else. They exploit these moments to maximize the impact, knowing that doubts are easier to plant when your mental defenses are lower. Every word, every action is calculated to confuse, destabilize, and provoke a reaction that feeds their ego. Yet, it is important to recognize that gaslighting is not about truth or morality, it is about control. Their aim is not to convince you of a specific lie permanently, but to generate enough doubt to make you dependent on their validation. Understanding gaslighting amplification is critical to breaking free. Awareness is the primary defense. Once you recognize the pattern, that distortion of memory, questioning of perception, and emotional manipulation are deliberate, you can begin to anchor yourself in reality, document events, and rely on your own judgment rather than their narrative. When exposed, their amplified gaslighting loses its power, revealing desperation rather than authority. When a narcissist loses control over someone, one of their most insidious strategies is silent retaliation. Unlike overt aggression or confrontation, this tactic is subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye, yet profoundly effective. Silent retaliation operates on the principle that absence and withdrawal can be as powerful as direct manipulation. Instead of arguing, pleading, or confronting, the narcissist retreats into silence, withholding communication, affection, or acknowledgement. This sudden emotional void is designed to destabilize you, to make you feel unsettled, anxious, or guilty. By removing the familiar feedback loop they previously controlled, they hope to create a vacuum in which your dependence on their validation resurfaces and their perceived power is restored. The effectiveness of silent retaliation lies in its psychological ambiguity. There is no confrontation to respond to, no clear transgression to defend against. This forces you to speculate about the cause of their behavior, often leading you to internalize blame. You might find yourself replaying past interactions, analyzing every word and gesture, searching desperately for a mistake or offense. The narcissist, meanwhile, observes this internal struggle with satisfaction. Their silence becomes a tool, a form of covert manipulation, because it makes you respond emotionally even without their direct engagement. The paradox is that they are asserting control through non-action. The very lack of interaction is the mechanism of influence. Silent retaliation also serves as a method of punishment. Narcissists are often intolerant of boundaries or independence, and when those boundaries are asserted, they feel slighted or rejected. By withdrawing attention, affection, or communication, they aim to convey disapproval and elicit a sense of guilt. Unlike an argument which can be debated or dismissed, silence leaves no factual counter-argument. It creates an emotional tension that can be mentally exhausting, forcing you to question your worth and behavior. The more you internalize their withdrawal, the more they reinforce their illusion of power. Another critical aspect of silent retaliation is its unpredictability. A narcissist may switch between periods of engagement and sudden withdrawal, creating a roller coaster of emotional responses. This unpredictability keeps you on edge, reinforcing the illusion that you need to constantly adapt to their whims to regain approval. It is a controlled chaos, a psychological experiment in which the narcissist tests your emotional dependency while simultaneously asserting dominance. Over time, this pattern can erode self-confidence and make independent decision-making feel riskier, precisely because they want to maintain the illusion that they hold influence over your emotions and actions. Understanding silent retaliation requires recognizing the underlying motive, control. The withdrawal is not a reflection of your actions or worth. It is a deliberate mechanism to provoke dependency and reaction. Awareness is the key to countering it. By maintaining your composure, setting your own boundaries, and refusing to internalize their silence as a measure of your value, you neutralize the power of this tactic. Once their silence no longer triggers emotional turmoil, their strategy collapses, revealing the desperation behind what appeared as calculated restraint. Silent retaliation, when exposed and understood, loses its potency entirely. Triangulation is a classic tactic narcissists use to regain control when they feel it slipping away, and it is both subtle and insidious. At its core, triangulation involves introducing a third party into a conflict or dynamic, not to solve a problem, but to manipulate perception, provoke insecurity, and reassert dominance. The narcissist leverages others, friends, family, colleagues, or even strangers, to create tension, jealousy, or competition. ensuring that your focus shifts away from clarity and toward emotional reactivity. This is not a casual act of social involvement. It is a calculated strategy designed to destabilize you, to make you question your value, your decisions, and even your relationships. Triangulation thrives on uncertainty, and the narcissist expertly manufactures that uncertainty to regain psychological leverage. The process begins subtly. The narcissist might make comparisons, suggesting that someone else is more competent, more desirable, or more loyal. Alternatively, they may share private details with another person to create gossip or implied judgment, planting seeds of doubt about your worth or behavior. These actions force you to interpret not only the narcissist's intentions, but also the imagined opinions of the third party, creating a web of uncertainty that is difficult to navigate. This mental and emotional overload serves their goal. By diverting your energy toward managing perceived threats, they regain the sense of control that your independence had challenged. Triangulation often manipulates core human emotions, particularly insecurity and fear of abandonment. Narcissists instinctively understand that being compared or measured against another person triggers anxiety, self-doubt, and defensiveness. By creating a scenario in which you feel competition or exclusion, they ensure that your emotional state is no longer grounded in reality, but in the narratives they have designed. Even subtle hints, a compliment to someone else, an unexplained absence, or vague references to others can provoke disproportionate reactions. In this way, they orchestrate a situation where your reactions validate their perceived power. Another critical aspect of triangulation is that it reinforces isolation. By involving others in the manipulation, narcissists create a sense of separation, implying that support or understanding must come from them alone. You may feel unsure who to trust or where loyalty lies, and this dependency restores the narcissist's influence without overt confrontation. They do not need to argue, threaten, or directly control. The fear, doubt, and emotional turbulence they generate do the work for them. The antidote to triangulation lies in awareness and emotional grounding. Recognizing that the narcissist's goal is not the opinions of others, but your reaction allows you to disengage from the psychological trap. By refusing to internalize comparisons or participate in their manufactured drama, you deny them the very energy they require to regain control. Triangulation, like all narcissistic tactics, relies on response. Once you maintain composure, question their motives, and preserve your autonomy, the tactic loses power, exposing the insecurity and desperation behind it. When a narcissist realizes they are losing control over someone, one of the most aggressive and destructive tactics they can deploy is a smear campaign. This strategy involves deliberately spreading false or misleading information about you to others with the intent of damaging your reputation, isolating you, and regaining influence indirectly. Unlike direct confrontation, a smear campaign is insidious because it operates in the shadows, manipulating the perceptions of people around you while keeping the narcissist ostensibly above reproach. Its effectiveness comes from the way it exploits social dynamics, human trust, and the natural inclination of people to believe partial truths or carefully constructed narratives. The process of a smear campaign typically begins subtly, often with insinuations, rumors, or exaggerated versions of minor incidents. The narcissist carefully crafts stories that serve their version of reality, painting themselves as the victim, the misunderstood, or the morally superior party while depicting you as irrational and untrustworthy or flawed. Because they often have social skills, charisma, or influence, these narratives can spread rapidly, and people tend to accept them without scrutiny, especially if they are presented in a confident, seemingly innocent manner. The goal is to create a network of social validation for the narcissist, while simultaneously undermining your credibility and confidence. One of the most psychologically damaging aspects of smear campaigns is that they exploit your emotional investment in relationships. Friends, family, colleagues, or even professional contacts may begin to treat you differently based on the narcissist's framing, which can generate confusion, self-doubt, and anxiety. You may start questioning your own behavior, replaying interactions in your mind, and worrying about whether you are indeed at fault. This internalization is exactly what the narcissist intends. The more you doubt yourself, the more they regain control indirectly, even without engaging in direct confrontation. Smear campaigns also serve as a form of isolation. By undermining your credibility and relationships, the narcissist reduces your social support system, making you more dependent on their validation or more vulnerable to future manipulation. The campaign may include selective sharing of private information, distortions of events, or the strategic involvement of mutual acquaintances. Each action is designed to reinforce the narcissist's authority and influence while creating emotional turmoil for you. The key to countering a smear campaign lies in understanding its purpose and maintaining perspective. Awareness that the narcissist's goal is control, not truth, allows you to detach emotionally from the narratives they construct. Documentation of interactions, clear communication with trusted allies, and careful boundary setting are essential strategies. By refusing to engage with the smear, limiting the impact of their stories, and preserving your integrity, you gradually neutralize the tactic. Smear campaigns only work when they provoke fear, guilt, or reactive behavior. When met with composure and awareness, they reveal desperation rather than power. When a narcissist realizes that their control over you is slipping, they may deploy one of their most deceptive tactics, fake vulnerability. This strategy involves presenting themselves as emotionally fragile, remorseful, or in need of support, not because they genuinely feel these things, but because it is an effective method of regaining influence. By appearing vulnerable, the narcissist taps into your empathy, compassion, and protective instincts, compelling you to respond in ways that reinforce their control. It is a subtle but highly manipulative maneuver designed to reverse the balance of power without overt confrontation. The intention is clear. If they cannot control you through authority, intimidation, or conflict, they will attempt to manipulate your emotions to achieve the same outcome. Fake vulnerability is often highly calculated. The narcissist may confess faults selectively, apologize superficially, or disclose minor personal struggles, all carefully framed to evoke a specific reaction from you. They do not reveal their true intentions. Instead, they craft a performance that convinces you they are seeking connection or reconciliation. The more convincingly they play the role, the greater the likelihood that you will abandon boundaries, lower your defenses, or re-engage with them emotionally. Their objective is to exploit your trust and goodwill, transforming empathy into a tool for manipulation. One of the reasons fake vulnerability is so effective is that it taps into natural human instincts. Most people are wired to respond to perceived weakness with support, protection, or care. Narcissists exploit this instinct by creating scenarios where you feel responsible for their emotional well being. This can be subtle: a sigh, a tearful confession, a seemingly regretful statement, or more elaborate, involving a carefully staged scenario in which they appear wronged or misunderstood. The result is that your focus shifts from your own needs and autonomy to managing their emotional presentation, giving them indirect control over your actions and decisions. This tactic also works because it masks the narcissist's aggression or previous manipulative behaviors. By presenting vulnerability, they redirect attention away from their attempts to dominate or manipulate, creating a perception of moral superiority or emotional depth. You may find yourself rationalizing their behavior, forgiving past transgressions, or minimizing their manipulations, all of which serve to restore the psychological leverage they had lost. It is a form of psychological entrapment, where your empathy and concern become mechanisms through which the narcissist subtly coerces compliance. The key to neutralizing fake vulnerability is recognition and emotional detachment. Understanding that the display is strategic rather than sincere allows you to respond without compromising boundaries. Maintaining clarity about your own needs, limiting emotional investment in their performances, and observing patterns rather than isolated incidents reduces their ability to manipulate. Fake vulnerability only succeeds when it provokes a reactive emotional response. Once met with composure and awareness, it reveals desperation, not sincerity. By seeing through the act, you reclaim autonomy, denying the narcissist the influence they seek through contrived emotional displays. When a narcissist realizes that all their typical methods of control are failing, when charm, manipulation, triangulation, silent retaliation, gaslighting, and even fake vulnerability no longer elicit the desired response, they may resort to what can only be described as desperate escalation. This is the final all-in tactic, a dramatic intensification of their efforts to regain influence. Unlike earlier strategies, which are often subtle, calculated, or disguised, desperate escalation is bold, urgent, and sometimes reckless. It arises from a place of acute fear and anxiety. The narcissist senses a loss of power that threatens the foundation of their self-image, and they respond with extreme measures in an attempt to reassert control before it is permanently lost. Desperate escalation can manifest in a variety of ways, depending on the narcissist's personality, resources, and the context of the relationship. They may lash out with anger, threats, or accusations, attempting to intimidate or destabilize you. They might intensify manipulative behaviors such as exaggerating lies, spreading damaging rumors, or attempting to sabotage your reputation. In other cases, they may escalate emotional appeals, pleading for attention, sympathy, or forgiveness in ways that are more dramatic than before. The common thread in all these behaviors is intensity. The narcissist is signaling, consciously or unconsciously, that they are running out of time to regain influence, and they are willing to push boundaries further than ever. A defining characteristic of desperate escalation is its unpredictability. Because the narcissist is acting from a place of panic rather than strategy, their behavior can appear erratic or disproportionate. They may swing between aggression and charm, rage and contrition, cruelty and flattery, creating a whirlwind of emotional turbulence that is difficult to navigate. This volatility is intentional. By destabilizing your emotional equilibrium, They hope to provoke a reaction that reaffirms their power. Any response from you, whether fear, guilt, anger, or even compliance, is fuel for their sense of regained control. Desperate escalation also serves as a test of boundaries. Narcissists push limits to see how far they can go, exploiting weaknesses or vulnerabilities they have previously identified. They may attempt high-stakes manipulation, such as threatening relationships, exposing secrets, or creating crises designed to demand your attention and compliance. This is not random behavior. It is a final, intensified effort to reclaim dominance, demonstrating how far they are willing to go when all other tactics have failed. The antidote to desperate escalation is the same principle that neutralizes all narcissistic tactics: awareness, composure, and detachment. Recognizing that these extreme behaviors are a manifestation of panic and fear, not genuine power or legitimacy, allows you to remain steady by maintaining boundaries, refusing to react impulsively, and understanding that their escalation is a reflection of their insecurity. You deny them the energy they need to regain influence. When met with calm and consistency, even the most desperate escalation loses its effectiveness, revealing the narcissist's tactics as acts of fear rather than authority. The reality is simple but profound. Narcissists can only control you if you allow it. Every tactic, from subtle manipulation and gaslighting to triangulation, smear campaigns, fake vulnerability, and desperate escalation, is designed to provoke a reaction, to make you participate in the illusion of their power. When you step back, observe, and refuse to engage emotionally with their tricks, the control they crave evaporates. Awareness is your armor, composure is your shield, and boundaries are your most powerful weapon. Understanding these tactics is not about resentment or revenge. It's about clarity and freedom. By recognizing the patterns, anticipating the maneuvers, and maintaining your autonomy, you strip the narcissist of influence without confrontation. They thrive on reaction, confusion, and emotional dependency. Deny them these, and the illusion of power collapses. Ultimately, the lesson is clear. Control exists only where it is given. You cannot change a narcissist, but you can control yourself. Your thoughts, your decisions, and your boundaries are yours alone. Once you claim them fully, the tricks, the manipulation, and the panic that once defined your interactions lose all meaning. What remains is your freedom, your clarity, and the unshakable truth that no one, not even a master manipulator, can control you unless you let them.